What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Good to see all you guys today. We're gonna look at the plan for the week, and then we're gonna get into the first step of our personal narrative. So we're gonna start that this week. We'll get through all the pre-writing and the first draft stage this week, and then next week we'll just be finishing it off and turning the final copy. So I'm gonna pull up our resources here. So again, and I'll always make sure to say this every week. You guys don't need to go through these folders to find any of the assignments or resources. All right, just don't forget that, because I there's always one or two people that are still asking me like, hey, where do I find this assignment? Where do I find something? And it's always going to be here in the plan. All right, so that way I try to just make it as easy as I can. It's broken down by day. Here's Monday's links, Tuesday's links, Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday and Thursday, Friday. That way you guys don't have to go searching through the folders. I don't want you to have to do that, because that could be a pain in the butt. So with this stuff, it says everything's due Saturday, but since we are writing this pretty big paper, right, and it's going to end up being a big portion of your grade for this quarter, since we're doing that, I think about it as it's a big meal, and we're going to eat it one little small chunk at a time. So that's why I have all these daily steps, and it's like, for example, we'll do this brainstorm sheet today, but if you don't have it done by tomorrow's video, that video is not going to make much sense, right? So even though it's not due till Saturday, it's important to stay caught up so that you're not looking at videos that don't even apply to what you're doing, right? Stay caught up with these. Take the time to just knock each little small step out, and then you're not going to have to go back and make up a bunch of stuff later on. For the most part, you guys have done really well with staying caught up, getting your work turned in, and everything like that. So keep it up, okay? Monday, video on personal narrative brainstorm sheet. So we'll knock out that very first step today. And the assignment, I do want you to finish that and turn it in today, just so I can look over everybody's before we start the next step. So here's links for the brainstorm sheet, and then one that's a completed example, which will be helpful, which is what I'm going to go over because it's on mine. Tomorrow, video on personal narrative graphic organizer, and then office hours. I'm thinking you guys probably want to get in there for a little bit and ask some questions and things like that. Your assignment: complete the graphic organizer for personal narrative, and then submit that too. And then here's yours, the blank one, and then there's my completed example. Wednesday, video on introduction and conclusion paragraphs for the personal narrative. So that video will be short, sweet, and then the assignment's pretty easy. You're just outlining 2 paragraphs that are really straightforward and then submitting that, okay? And then here's your effective introduction paragraph outline. So that's the one you'll fill out. And I'll throw my completed example on there too. Then Thursday, video on the drafting stage. So I'm just gonna kind of model how to draft some of your paragraphs. I think the one I modeled, I just did like, paragraphs 1 and 2. So here's how you turn them in from the graphic organizer to an actual written paragraph. And then for a draft, we're just splitting it up between Thursday and Friday, because it's going to end up being around 9 paragraphs, right? It's pretty long. It's longer than our All About Me essay, almost twice as long. So having you split it up between 2 days. So Thursday, start your draft of the personal narrative, just paragraphs 1 through 4. Okay, so that's what I want you to write out. Do not submit until it's completed on Friday. So if you type out paragraphs 1 through 4 or write them out, don't submit just that. Wait till you write out the rest of it the next time. I'm just going to trust that on Thursday that that's what you're doing. I don't need proof of it. And then your link for that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, your link for that, it's just that model of mine to show you guys how that's going to look. That's right there too. complete your draft of the personal narrative, paragraphs 5 through 9, and then submit it. So once on Friday by the end of the day, or Saturday maybe, it should be done. Then that's when I want you to submit it. Every one of these steps, the brainstorm sheet, the graphic organizer, the introduction, conclusion, and then the first draft, they're all going to be separate grades in the grade book. So if you just wait till Friday and all you turn in is a completed draft, I mean, that's awesome. That's good that you have it done, but that means you got a 0 on the introduction, conclusion, 0 on the graphic organizer, and then 0 on the brainstorm sheet. So even though you got that last step done, you're still going to have to find a way to come back from getting 3 zeros in the grade book. So make sure you guys are turning all those steps in. It's just a way for me to, make sure that you guys are doing the steps. And then it's a lot easier for me to find a mistake on a graphic organizer before you go through the next steps and you have a whole completed draft full of mistakes, right? So that's why we go through this process. And some of you guys, even on the brainstorm sheet, I might say this idea doesn't work. We might have to come up with a different one. Okay, so that's why those things are really important. Again, all the links are right here. So let's look at the brainstorm sheet first. Actually, let me go back. I'm going to open all these in different tabs. And this might be helpful for you guys to do too. So the completed one is going to be one tab, and then I'll open up the blank one and explain that first. Get this stuff out of here. That's complete, and here's the brainstorm. Okay, this is the blank one. Just waiting for it to load. Here it goes. Yeah, so it shows up funny. There's supposed to be stuff right underneath here. I don't know why it's this big space, but if you just scroll down, it's on the next page. I'm not sure why it did that. I tried like everything I could to get it right, but whatever. It's all there. So brainstorm for narrative writing. You're just gonna the point of this sheet is that you're gonna really loosely and really quickly map out your story. Again, personal narrative. It's going to be based on an experience that happened to you, right? We talked about memoirs a couple weeks ago. One specific memory. Now that could be one day that was impactful to you. I've had kids in the past maybe write about a vacation that they went on or something like that. That was like a few days. And I've had some kids. I had a student last year. He wrote about a whole basketball season, because his team did really well. So even though it was like a couple months span, we kind of figured out a way to get that down to, one concise story. So again, I mentioned this last weekend to be thinking about what you want to write about. We're going to map those things out. It has to be something that's important to you and that you learned a lesson from, because that's the whole point of a good story. It's got to have a conflict, and it's got to have a solution and a lesson or conclusion that you come to. So in the beginning, it says you're going to list the setting, time, and place. Now, my story, didn't just happen in one place. So when I list the settings, and you'll see that in a minute, there's a bunch of different things that I had to list, and different times as well. List all the characters involved. Underneath that, you're going to briefly describe the problem in your story. So just in a sentence even, what's the problem? And that's where this goes. So you're going to list the setting, list the characters, describe the problem. And again, like in a sentence. And then the middle, these are going to be the events in your story. And, you could say one day, if you're talking about, let's say, a day at school, you might think, well, that's just one event. But it's really not, because you got to think you woke up, you got ready for school, you got on the bus, you talked to your friends in the cafeteria at breakfast, you went to first hour and something happened, and then later on the day in PE, something else happened, and just that alone, that's 6 events, right? They're not huge things, but think of it as like little stepping stones to get you from the beginning of your story to the end of it. So what do those stepping stones look like? And how you're going to put that on here, you just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 events, I think is a good amount. Some people need to do more depending on how long their story is. But I think you should have at least 7. Mine, I wanted to do more, but I kind of held myself at 7. just to fit with the model and everything like that. So it's all really clear. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when I show you mine and kind of how I figured that out. So then the ending. So I'm looking for the solution to the problem, and then either the lesson that you learn, what did you learn from this event, or the conclusion. Okay. Briefly describe the lesson you learned or the conclusion you came to as a result of the event. So you're just going to briefly describe what happens at the ending. Kind of think of this as like, where do the characters end up? And then the lesson or conclusion, tell me what you learned. I'm going to keep going back to this example because it's a really good one, but the student who wrote about basketball, he had tried out for the team here at Lincoln twice in 6th and 7th grade and didn't make the team. And then he finally made it, his 8th grade year. And I think a big part of the lesson that he learned was that even though stuff gets really difficult and it seems like there's no point in to keep trying, that he needed to keep pushing, basically never give up, and there's a lot of different ways to say that. So that's the blank one. And you can download that, fill it out. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll show you mine and talk a little bit about what I'm writing about. So again, same thing. There's this huge space, which I don't know why it's doing that. The event I'm writing about is a couple summers ago. My son, he was bit by a dog and had to have an emergency surgery. And it was a not a fun day, or not really like a fond memory. Definitely. It's not something I like thinking about all the time. But I do think that as a result of that, me and my whole family learned some things, and we all grew a little bit, even though it was a pretty terrible event, right? I think you can even take bad things like that and try to find the positives in them. So that's what I'm writing about. And this is the first time I'm actually writing about this. In the past, I just used some examples that I pulled from like another online source, but I wanted to make a story that was my own. I think that'll be easier for me to kind of walk you guys through this if I'm doing that. So here's the setting. And again, a lot of different things. My house, in the car, the hospital emergency room, the hospital waiting room, and then like the actual like hospital room where he ended up staying for some time, afterwards. And this was in July 2018. And then, in the story, I kind of give conclusions like or references to like it's early in the morning, then it's mid-afternoon, things like that. But I didn't list those. I kind of just said this is when, year, and the month. And I think that this is enough, right? There might be things here listed that I don't include in my story because maybe as I'm getting to the point of actually writing it out, maybe one event wasn't that important. So I'll leave that out. That's okay. This brainstorm sheet is not set in stone. You might have things on here that you don't use in your narrative. You might have things that aren't on here that you end up using in your narrative kind of as you go through the process. It's a totally fluid process, fluid meaning that it's constantly changing. Your story is, and that's okay. I don't want you to think, I wrote this in my brainstorm sheet, I got to include. You don't have to. And I'm not going to grade based on that. I'm going to see that you told the best story that you can. Characters, me, my mom, my dad, Eli, it's my baby son, Jackie, it's my wife, and then Sonny was the one who was bit. And then this was a doctor, Dr. Costa, who did his surgery and everything. So here's a problem. My son was attacked by a dog. Now, for the events, it was hard for me to figure out where to start. How do I want to start the story? I know where I was at when I woke up that day, so that was kind of easy. And that's kind of what I put at event 1. I was at home with my son, Eli. Sonny stayed at his grandparents' house, so he wasn't home with us. My phone was dead and on the charger, sorry. And Eli and I were watching the Avengers. Jackie was at work, okay, which is something that I didn't include on my brainstorm sheet that I'm going to make sure I want to add in when I get to my next step. So kind of what I did, I said, I don't really know how to start. I go from there because I don't want to spend too much time on events that weren't important, right? So what I did was I just jumped to the end and I came up with my event 7. And left the rest of these blank for the time being. I said, okay, where do I want to stop telling the story? Once we kind of learned the lessons, came to the conclusion, once the actual problem was solved, what were we doing and where were we? And that was this. Okay. So they moved us back into the room where we would stay for the next few days. So this was after his surgery. This was after, some uncertainties happened. But at this point, I just remember, we were good. We knew that it was going to be difficult days ahead, but at this point we were good. I think the immediate problem was solved, and there was a lot of stuff that's happened with this event afterwards, but I'm trying to keep it to just one really concise story. Okay. So that's why I stopped here. So once we were back in the hospital room after his surgery, we knew we were going to be there for a few days. That's why I said, okay, we can breathe a little bit. And so that's where I'm going to end the story. Ending I'll get to in a minute. So skipping around again, I kind of just went back, just throw this in. This is important. I want to talk about this. And I did it all out of order. But I think what I ended up with was a relatively concise way to tell my story. So you don't have to just start 1, 2, 3 and go in order. I want you to do this however it's easiest for you. So I said I checked my phone and had several missed calls and voicemails, and I knew something was up. My wife told me a dog had bitten Sonny while he was at his grandparents' house. My next event, I dropped Eli off and rushed to the hospital where they were taking him. I hurried into the emergency room, and I got to see him, Sonny that is, and be with my wife. The doctors came in and spoke to us about surgery and possible complications. We walked back to the surgery prep room, and they put Sonny to sleep. And this is where a lot of the other problems come in my story. This is a main conflict. This event is the central conflict in my story, just because this is what keeps all the characters moving, right? And it kept the action going forward. We're trying to sort this out. But other things do come up in the story. There's not just one conflict. 5, we waited in the waiting room impatiently. Jackie and I sat in the small room, talked about how guilty we both felt. And then event 6, the doctor finally came to the waiting room. He told us the surgery went fine. He would have no nerve damage, just a scar. So at this point in event 6, the conflict of the dog biting him is solved. He had the surgery did what it was supposed to do. It closed the wound and did all that, and there wasn't going to be any major post complications. So because of that, everything was kind of solved at that point. So at the ending, it's kind of what I said here, right? And you're gonna find that too. It's really similar to what you said here. We settled in the hospital room and got to focus on his recovery, and that's how I'm gonna kind of end my story. So the lesson, and I kind of got 2 things because, I had a lesson and then more of a conclusion. And because at this point, when I was doing the brainstorm sheet, I didn't know which one of these I wanted to focus on. But I took the 2 things as separate things. I know they're both important. But one of these, as I go through the process, I kind of just push to the side. I don't need it. I don't want to focus on that. And then I picked one that I did want to focus on. So I said I learned to be more protective of my kids. As I went through the process, I didn't think that this was as important of a lesson as this. I was reminded that my wife and kids can handle anything life throws at us. So, and that's the truth. After this event, I've kind of chilled, a little bit. And I think I've had a change in my personality and the way I approach things, because when we do have problems, not that life has been really easy since this all happened, because it definitely hasn't been. But I know that when something does come up, I just kind of say, well, we can handle it. We can handle anything. If we can get through this event that I'm describing, we can get through anything. So that's a conclusion that I came to. So as you guys fill this out, these 2 things, problem and then the lesson, I think are the most crucial things. Once you get those 2 sorted out, you can be able to build a story around that. Characters and setting, bullet point and list them. Okay. Same with these, really. I mean, this isn't much to build paragraphs off of. That's why the next step, the graphic organizer, is really important. Okay. These are just getting from your mind down on paper or on the computer screen, mapping your story out. This is just kind of weaving your way, putting those stepping stones down to get you from the beginning to the end. Okay. All of this can change. You might have something in the outline sheet that tomorrow you decide you're unhappy with and want to get rid of it, change it, fix it. make it better as you go. That's what the process is about. Okay. And again, these things can be kind of bullet points, and that's okay too. If as long as you got enough, I think like one sentence probably isn't enough, but really it's more, this is more for you than it is for me. And this is for something that when I check these Tuesday, I can read through and say, okay, this is they can tell a story with this, or I can make corrections and things like that. But yeah, that's it. Make sure that you guys get this done by Tuesday. That way you'll be ready for the next step. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the graphic organizer, which is another, I feel like I'm using this word too much, but it's important. It's an important step. That's where we're going to flesh out these ideas from your outline sheet. And that's where we're going to take in that information and say, okay, we can build paragraphs from this. So again, make sure you guys are staying caught up. I expect you to have a lot of questions because this is a big assignment. This is a big paper that we're writing. There's some tricky parts to it. Don't ever feel like you're bothering me. If you want to Zoom, whether it's during school time or in the evening, whatever, let me know. I am here to help you guys. Other than that, I will see you all tomorrow.